Hello there. My name's Steve Meader. I'm the Director of UKRI's Future Leaders Fellowship Scheme, and I'd like to welcome you to this video webinar where I'll go over a little bit about the Future Leaders Fellowship Scheme ahead of round 8. Apologies in advance. My children are at home, and if they break in at any point asking for snacks or so on, I can only apologise. I've put them next door with some popcorn and a copy of Paddington 2, so hopefully they should be entertained for the next half an hour or so. I'm going to go over a few different bits relating to the scheme over the next half an hour or so. The key things I'm going to hit on are firstly an overview of the Future Leaders Fellowships, or FLF scheme as we call it here at UKRI. Key messages from recent rounds, some tips on applying to the scheme, a bit of an overview of our decision-making process, and then finally I'll touch on some areas around career development support in terms of what UKRI can offer and what we expect the hosts to offer to the fellow as part of the fellowship scheme. So, what is the UKRI Future Leaders Fellowship Scheme? This was originally funded as part of the National Productivity Investment Fund to grow the number of talented individuals within the UK, ensuring that UK research and innovation is world-class. That was for the first 6 rounds of the scheme. We're now on rounds 7 and 8, so we've continued to take this forward beyond the National Productivity Investment Fund. What we're continuing to do is to attract, develop and retain the most promising future leaders at a known career pinch point. And I'll come on to that in shortly. We provide seamless support across the entire remit of UKRI. So we fund everything from archaeology to zoology. We're across the whole of UKRI with no ring-fenced budgets or discipline. Everything is considered on its own merits. Some have said at some points we're comparing apples to polar bears. That's true, but we seem to have found a method that means we can assess these fairly and fund the best future leaders within the UK. Fellows can be set in a range of settings. They can be based in academia, in business, or in other research and innovation settings. So what we're doing with this scheme is targeting early career researchers. It's a known career pinch point, and this should allow us to attract, develop, and retain the most promising future leaders at this known critical point in people's career. As I say, we're looking for researchers and innovators with outstanding potential across the whole of the UKRI remit. Now, some of the things that we facilitate and encourage within the Future Leaders Fellowship Scheme are things around equality and diversity, interdisciplinary research and innovation, international mobility, so supporting those that are coming from overseas to work in the UK, part-time and flexible working, cross-sector working, research and innovation hosted within business, and then enhanced host support for long-term career development. Now, I should say not all of these elements are mandatory for each candidate that comes in. You may tick 1 or 2 of these boxes, or you may just have a very strong project and a very strong discipline-focused project. But as an entire package of FLF, these are the things that we want to encourage via the scheme. So what is the fellowship? The fellowship is a monetary award for a fellow to conduct a specific program of research and innovation that will significantly enhance an individual's early career. It gives you protected time to focus on research and innovation activities, receiving mentoring and enhanced training opportunities. It's an award for somebody who has already gained a doctorate or has equivalent experience, and I must emphasize that a doctorate is not necessary, but you should have sort of demonstrate equivalent experience to that if you're applying. But the person would still be early in their career with the potential to be an outstanding leader in their field. And at the moment, the scheme is funded. It's a 7-year fellowship with a midpoint review. So you'd come in for your first 4 years of funding in the first instance, with a potential 3 years to be asked for. You come in for this roughly 70% through the initial part of your project for those extra 3 years of funding. But overall, it's seen as a 7-year package. One of the questions received most of all from the scheme is, what is early career? And I'm afraid there's no standard answer to this. We encourage applications from the broadest spectrum of backgrounds, career pathways and disciplines. Business and academia, we have people changing disciplines, having career breaks, times in other roles. There's no tick box set of rules. And it's really down for you to justify your application, why you're at the early career point, and the difference that this fellowship would make to you and your career trajectory. What we're considering here is the thing we consider here is transitioning to independence. Really, those people moving out from working in a larger research group to setting up their own research group or innovation group. Applicants who have already achieved research and or innovation dependence, evidenced by having a significant portfolio of grants as a lead PI already, will not be considered competitive. It would just not be seen as good value for money compared to somebody who's going to sort of springboard their career at this point. And senior academics and innovators are not eligible for this scheme. If you're curious about the person specification, this is provided on the FLF webpage, which you can click to from these slides, or you can always just email in, and if you have any questions, we can converse with you around specific eligibility. Now I'm going to come on to some key messages that we're going to discuss from the latest rounds of FLF. So, where are we in the scheme of things? So there have been 6 rounds of Future Leaders Fellowships awarded to date. We have just under 500 fellows overall. Round 7 of the scheme has closed, and the applications are currently under review, with an announcement of those expected later this year, in 2023. And round 8, which I'm speaking to you about, is currently open with a closing date in July. If you'd like to see examples of who our Future Leaders Fellows are, you can go to the UKRI webpage, and we have a database of everyone that's been funded so far. So we'll not be able to give you any information on what's happened with round 7 so far, but we can give you messages from round 6. The success rate for round 6 was about 11%, with 84 awards made. The strongest applicants fully considered not just the research project they would be doing, but the leadership and career development that would be necessary to move them on their career trajectory. Candidates who are further towards being established and independent have become less competitive as the scheme has progressed, as compared to people that are perhaps slightly earlier in their career and use this as more of a springboard. And it's very important that applicants should articulate the clear value of the fellowship mechanism to supporting them, and why it's the right funding scheme for them. Why not just a collection of project grants? Why a fellowship that buys out their time? What exactly is the Future Leaders Fellowship scheme and the support that provides right for them at this moment? Other messages from round 6 that we'd like to point out are things such as questions that were asked at interview, and perhaps things that were pulled out of the applications on equality, diversity and inclusivity and research culture were perhaps not always that well understood by interviewees. So if you're in a research office, we recommend supporting your applicants and getting them to think a little bit more about this prior to coming in to application and to interview. We also saw a lower than anticipated diversity of candidates at the point of application, and we want hosts to support all potential applicants to ensure that there's a fair chance, and that are encouraged to apply to a transparent selection process based on their ability and potential. The last thing we'd like to say is that we encourage an increase in number of applications from the arts and humanities and social sciences communities. There are some perceptions out there that perhaps we don't fund some of these awards because they're smaller in scale, perhaps in terms of the funding that's being required compared to some of the STEM sciences. But this isn't true. There is no difference in the award rate between arts and humanities and social sciences communities, applications from those communities, and for STEM awards. I should say the scheme also funds a wide range of award sizes. We have things from 300K for the first 4 years to awards that are well in excess of 1.5 million. And it's really about justifying the funding that you're requesting as part of the justification for resources. Some updates specific to round 8 for the scheme. Firstly, the requirement to provide an outlined proposal has been removed. We used to ask that people submit a shorter outline that would come in a couple of months ahead of the final full proposal. Now we just ask for the full proposal. This doesn't impact on the amount of time host organizations have to submit an application. And I should say many of the changes that we've made to round 8 are really focused on reducing the amount of bureaucracy and streamlining the Future Leaders Fellowships application and review process. Second point to mention is that a letter of support from mentors is no longer required. Their details should still be included in the case for support, but the letter of support is no longer necessary. Applicants based in charities and public bodies are now also available to apply to the scheme, as well as businesses, and we're looking to broaden the base of people that are able to apply to the scheme. And our guidance on subsidy control, specifically for those within businesses and charities, has now been updated. Also, updates for round 8. Peer review remains one of the most significant challenges that we have in terms of the UKRI side of reviewing all of our applications. So applicants, please do suggest applicant nominated reviewers that we can consider when going out to peer review for your applications. One of the questions we also get is, will we be returning to in-person interview panels? We used to do this prior to the COVID pandemic, but we can say for this round, for round 8, online panels will be continuing. Similarly to round 7, the number of applications which can be submitted by each academic host organisation is capped. Full details are published in the guidance, but essentially we were receiving so many applications to the Future Leaders Fellowship Scheme that the workload on the UKRI staff and on the peer review community was unsustainable. So we've had to put in some demand management to enable a reasonable timeline of review to be met. Hosts are, as part of the demand management process, we asked people hosts in round 7 to provide a statement around what their inclusive processes were for selecting the people that they would put forward as part of their sort of cadre of applicants. Hosts that provided an inclusive selection inclusive selection process statements during round 7 only need to confirm if the original statement still reflects their process. They don't really need to repeat this process. If it's changed, they can provide an update. If you're a host submitting an application to round 8 who didn't submit to round 7, we will need you to provide a statement via the survey link found on the funding opportunity page. Yeah, there only needs to be one statement per research organisation, not per application. The next couple of slides, this is on demand management. So just explain a little bit about why we implemented demand management. Firstly, Future Leaders Fellowships is a very highly competitive scheme. I mentioned earlier the success rate for round 6 was about 10%. And we've seen a steady increase in the number of applications, particularly as we got to sort of rounds 4, 5, and 6 of the scheme. And as you see, success rates for round 4 were 26%, then down to round 5, we had 16%. We sent out a request to the host organisations to reduce applications for round 6, but this still led to an increase in application numbers, with success rates for round 6 dropping to 11%. And as I say, that situation was not sustainable for a number of reasons outlined here. There's no easy approach to demand management. We considered a wide range of different scenarios, and the number of applications that each academic host may submit, which is between 2 and 10, which between 2 and 10 are detailed within the guidance and are based on the researcher base at each individual research organisation. Eligible research institutes, charities, public bodies and businesses are not subject to this application cap, largely because it's very rare that we see more than one application from these institutes or from these bodies in any particular round. So we ask that those that haven't submitted before to round 7 include an EDI statement. This essentially describes the inclusive process that they've used to select their chosen candidates. All of the information submitted will contribute to an external review that's being undertaken, which aims to identify and share good practice relating to applicant support and inclusive selection processes. We've already been analysing those that came in from round 7, and they've proved to be incredibly insightful and useful, with the idea that we can perhaps publish something later about what best practice might be in this space. As I said before, host organisations that apply to round 7 and provided a statement just need to confirm the details remain the same, and the survey link will be open when the call opens, and it's open already. You can find that on the UKRI website. I'm not going to go into the details of points to consider in the EDI statement because many of you will have submitted one of these already. They're in here. You'll be able to see these in the slides, which you'll have access to alongside this webinar. So just some key dates for you to consider for the future rounds. Said this call opened on the 27th of March 2023. The closing date is the 4th of July 2023. That's for final full applications, no outline stage this time, with decisions expected to be communicated in May 2024, and the latest start date for successful fellows being November 2024. Okay, now a little bit about applying to the scheme. So, firstly, when you're considering applying to this, consider, is this the most suitable scheme for you? Look at the program of work that the person is putting forward, and look at why should it be this scheme, not another UKRI or other funding scheme that's available. There are other skills-based fellowships available and other ways of accessing money research. So why is this the right project and the right application for this scheme? So things that you need to consider are, is the applicant one of outstanding potential? Is the proposed research program addressing a multifaceted, significant and difficult research or innovation problem? Is the award of this fellowship going to offer a step change in the career of the applicant? And is the host organisation willing to provide significant support in terms of the opportunities and training provided? And the host support really does need to be tailored to the applicant, showing specifically why the host is supporting this applicant over the course of the next 7 years of this fellowship. On screen now are the 4 assessment criteria that we use as part of the review and assessment process of the Future Leaders Fellowship Scheme. So, we consider all 4 of these aspects. They are all considered and assessed across the piece. We're not just looking at one of these. They're not weighted, and they should all be addressed as part of the application. It really, really is important to think about all 4 assessment criteria. It's not just about the research and innovation project that you're putting forward. Research and innovation excellence, the applicant and their development, impact and strategic relevance, and the research innovation environment and cost. So, you need to think about things like, for research and innovation excellence, what's the importance, the novelty and the feasibility of the proposed programme of work, and whether this long-term fellowship support is needed to enable this? Is there a robust methodology and appropriate consideration of, research and innovation reproducibility, openness, governance, ethical and social responsibility issues? And what's the overall potential of the fellowship to establish or maintain a distinctive and outstanding research and innovation activity? Onto the applicant and their development, we need to consider, is the applicant recognised to be of the highest standard relative to their career stage and on a trajectory to become world class? is there clear evidence of independence and thought leadership that maybe go beyond the level normally expected of their current position? Do they demonstrate an ability to be or become a clear communicator and disseminator of knowledge and innovation, able to inspire and lead others, and an ability to develop new relationships and to influence across multiple disciplines and sectors? And do they have a clear plan to support the training and development of the fellow and the other people in their team throughout the course of the fellowship? On impact and strategic relevance, is the application considering the importance and potential impact of the research innovation for science, for society and for the economy? And what are the potential short or long-term impacts? How will they be achieved and how significant are they? Are the pathways to achieving this impact well understood, and are the plans for maximizing impact proportionate, timely, and credible? The last one to touch on here is the research environment and innovation. Research and innovation environment and cost. And are we seeing a demonstrable commitment from the host organization to realizing the potential of the fellow? And are they establishing them and are they really supporting them as a research and innovation leader? And what are their plans for supporting the fellows' work over the course of the next sort of four to 7 years? You can find all of this information at the link below. The key documents you want to focus on are listed here. The guidance for academic hosted applicants, guidance for non-academic host assessments, and the assessment criteria. Little bit about the application process now. There are 4 stages to the process. There's the proposal that you're developing. There is the external written peer review that we conduct as part of this process. There are our SIFT panels where we whittle down to a smaller number of applications who we bring it forward to interview. And there are interview panels where we bring the fellows into a virtual meeting where we ask them a range of questions. And based on all of the above, we make a decision on who the strongest applicants are and will be the recipients of the Future Leaders Fellowships Awards. So how do we apply for this? So with regards to the proposal, the outline vision is required for the full period, that is the 4 + 3 years, but providing detailed plans and costings for the first 4 years, and that's what will be applied for here, and sort of broader plans for the second period if available. It's not essential that fellows have to decide at the application stage whether or not they intend to apply for the +3 function of each scheme. But if they do have those plans, then they need to be built in at this point. There's a number of documents here which go through. I'm not going to go through each of these in detail. You can find more information about these online. In terms of writing a proposal, some hints and tips that we can give you. Firstly, are when writing your proposal, there should be the key thing that you need to be able to answer as a question is, why does this piece of research matter? Why should this piece of research in innovation be funded? Why should you be doing it? And why should you be doing it in your chosen, in the chosen host that's going to be supporting you? And why is all of this important to do now? So you can achieve this through answering a number of questions, clear articulation of the research and/or innovation projects. What should be planned to ensure that these are delivered to the highest standard? What activities will ensure that the fellow is going to be able to maximize their potential, not just in terms of the research, but in terms of how they will develop as an individual over the course of the fellowship, in terms of a number of different attributes, and what the fellows can do to ensure that their fellowship has the greatest impact. Who do they need to be involved to realize all of those questions above? Who are they going to work with? How are they going to make those links? And how should the project be resourced so that these ambitious aims can be realized? One of the things we want to touch on here is that, typically a a fellow would be hosted in a single organization, but we recognize that many of the sort of really high level important research that we're looking at funding it through these schemes, require collaboration across any number of associated partners, collaborators, or co-hosting organizations. There are opportunities within the application to add additional expertise. We don't expect every applicant to be an expert in everything that they're covering, and knowing where there are areas where you need greater support is one of the key things in putting together a strong application. So look to the opportunities to access additional expertise, facilities, and networks of related research and development. Innovation is really encouraged. And we support novel partnerships between business and academia. So yeah. Final thoughts on applying. The first is read the guidance really carefully. If you don't, things are going to get sent back for you to do again, and it delays the whole process. Also, really make sure that you're checking what it is that this scheme is assessing you for, and whether or not this scheme is the right scheme for you. As I say, this is a UKRI-wide scheme, and it's likely to be very different to individual council schemes that you've applied to before. The guidance is revised prior to each round opening. So if you applied to a previous round and are applying again, make sure that you go back and reread that new guidance, because things may have changed between rounds. As I said before, and I've said multiple times, it's important to address all of the criteria for the scheme and to clearly identify why this applicant is the best possible fit to this project at this institution now. And what is it that the career boost offered by this fellowship at this stage? What is the career boost offered by this fellowship at this stage of the individual's career? That's the why now part. What will the outputs and outcomes be? And is this likely to be a step change? And will it be internationally leading? That's all I'm going to cover on applying. I'm going to touch a little bit now on the decision-making process. We try and be as transparent as possible in a sort of the workings of UKRI and how we go through the decision-making process, how we assess applications, and how we ultimately make the awards to the fellows that we choose. So we go. The decision-making process. There's 4 stages to our decision-making process. The first of these, you submit the application to us, and then your application goes out for external written peer review by discipline and/or sector experts. These experts are chosen by UKRI, specifically by subject matter specialists within the research councils in Innovate UK, to ensure that all reviewers are experts in the field. You can expect each proposal to receive 3 or more reviews, depending on the breadth of research within the grant. And then once all reviews are received, the proposal is sent back to the councils for coverage checks, ensuring all elements of all of the grants are covered. The peer reviewer comments will then go out to the applicant to provide a response. You get 3 pages to respond to all of the reviews received, and there's signposts on our website for tips and tricks on how to do this. Then we have the panels. We have a shortlisting panel, or a SIFT panel, as we call it. The role of this panel is to moderate the reviewer comments and the PI response, and to identify which of those candidates we're able to invite to interview. Typically on any given round, we are able to fund somewhere between around 80 and 100 awards. Normally, regardless of the number of the applications that come in to an interview stage, we are looking at taking, I would say, somewhere between about 160 to just over 200 people through to the final interview stage for those 80 to 100 awards. So the SIFT panel just considers the reviewer comments and the PI response. Those that are successful at that point are invited to an interview stage, where they will meet with an interview panel. who will ask questions across all 4 of the assessment criteria, as well as any specific questions that were raised by the reviewers or the SIFT panels, and will make recommendations to UKRI on the funding outcome. So a little bit more on the peer review. As I said, this is conducted by sector and discipline experts that are chosen by the Research Council staff and Innovate UK to ensure that, I've covered all of this. Okay, I covered all this on the previous slide. You're good. I'll move on. In terms of the applicant response, you get your opportunity to rebut any of the questions or any of the criticisms or claims or comments that have been made on your application from the external peer reviewer comments. This is a really good opportunity for you to solidify your application and the reviewer's thought, the applicant's thoughts on your proposal by rebutting any of those comments that you're able to that came in. The key thing is to be positive and keep your cool. It can be, if you spend a long time writing this project and people have written things, even if they've got the wrong end of the stick or they're incorrect, or even they've written in a slightly unsupportive way, it can be very easy to sort of get annoyed by that. But just be positive, keep your cool, just point out why you may disagree with them and the evidence to support that. Appeal to your audience. I think it's key to remember that your applicant response is not seen by the reviewers who wrote the comments to which you're responding. The audience is the panel, the SIFT panel, which is an entirely different set of people that say it's a moderating panel, entirely different set of people to those that wrote the original peer review comments. So remember that it's them that you're writing to. As I said, back up your claims. If you've got more preliminary data to support your application, you can include that at this point if you want to. Provide evidence for any arguments that you're making as to why the reviewer's comments may not be correct. And be clear and concise and keep to the guidelines. So onto the moderating panels. So say these are run online. We have multiple panels, given the number of applications that we receive, that are broadly focused on wider areas of research and innovation, and they're made up from a variety of experts across the research and innovation system. As I said, they'll assess all aspects of your proposal, the application, the reviewer comments, the rebuttal, against the 4 assessment criteria. And these are a moderating panel providing a high-level sectoral overview. They consider all of the above and will proposals are each one is discussed. They are scored and they are ranked and banded, and those, in as many as were possible within the top bands, are able to be taken through to the interview stage. We have roving panel members that move between the different panels to ensure that panels are acting in a consistent manner, scoring similarly against the assessment criteria. And then once all of those panels are finished, we have a tensioning process across the panels where UKRI staff work with the roving panel members and the chairs of those panels to ensure that there's tensioning across them and give the final banded lists on who will be invited to interview. And I should note that there is no further feedback provided to candidates at this stage outside of the reviews. There's simply too many applications for us to be able to do this. Okay, interview panels. All candidates successful at the SIFT process are brought forward to interview. Again, interview panels are held online. Multiple panels are held again because we have so many applications, using a variety of experts from across the research and innovation system. They are at this point assessing the whole proposal across all 4 assessment criteria and looking at the added value. And we want to make sure that you have the right to reply as an applicant. So essentially what happens is that nothing will be raised with regards to your application that you have not been able to respond to, either as part of your rebuttal or as part of your interview. So if somebody raises something, an issue, a methodological issue, or an issue with your perhaps development, unless it's been raised to you, it will not be considered as part of the process. So we want you to have the right to reply to everything that happens as part of this process. Example interview questions are available online. Topic areas include research and innovation focus, so really digging into the proposed program of work, leadership focus, how will the applicant develop their potential, and career development focus, how will the fellowship benefit the holder. As with the SIFT panels, the proposals are scored, ranked, and banded. Roving panel members, again, ensure consistency between the different interviewing panels, and then tensioning across the panels is undertaken to produce the final banded lists of the successful applicants. This slide here just gives a slight overview of what the interview process is like. So the interview, the whole process starts with 5 minutes of closed panel discussion for the panel to get together, reflect on the previous comments and any and decide which specific questions that each panel member may specifically want to ask ahead of the interview. The candidate is then welcomed and asked to give a presentation. This lasts about 7 minutes. And the presentation title is usually an update on things that have happened since the previous application, but it will be given, the title of the presentation will be given ahead of the interview. We then go to 3 introducing members. So you will have 3 dedicated panel members who have been looking at your application and will be specifically asking you questions. Each of those gets 7 minutes each. Then if anybody else on the panel, as there'll be more than just the 3 people interviewing on the panel, any other people on the panel that want to ask questions get a chance to ask questions. We thank the candidate and the candidate leaves. This then puts us into reflection time. So before we go straight into the discussion, we have 2 minutes of silent reflection where all of the panel members will sit there and perhaps arrange their thoughts before we go into the discussion process. And we feel this nicely puts all of the everybody on a sort of equal footing as they go in to start the discussion. Then we get 10 minutes for discussion and scoring before they go into a break before the next interview. I'm not going to cover any more of our actual process, but what I am going to talk about now is a little bit about career development support and the kind of things that we at UKRI provide to the fellow, those fellows that are successful, but also what we're expecting to see from the host organisation. And this is one of the key aspects of the fellowship award, and is the it's building on the emphasis of the individual and their personal and professional development. And we see at the Future Leaders Fellowship Scheme as being a 3-way partnership between UKRI, the fellow, and the host organisation. So what are we looking at in terms of host support? We want host organisations to support the fellow to establish themselves as a leader and provide a step change in their career. This is assessed as part of the criteria research and innovation, environment, and costs. And it's one of the 4 things that we're considering. So this is assessed at both the peer review stage and the panel stages as one of the key criteria. And it's really important that host support is tailored to the applicant, and it's not just that every applicant receives the same sort of boilerplate template with the name changed at the top. It's really a really strong application will have a very tailored letter of host support. So what we're looking for is support for the program of work, including space, access to facilities, equipment, resources, additional research costs, and perhaps additional support for staff, PhD students provided to the fellow, and so on. We also want to see things from the host support with regards to training. So, both research and innovation skills where appropriate, but more importantly, leadership training, how to manage teams, how to engage with different audiences, think about a training plan that's bespoke to these individuals that you're supporting to further their careers. Mentoring as well is that we see an important part of this scheme. We want people to have access to formal mentoring programs. So in addition to supporting establishment of informal relationships, we feel these access to formal mentoring programs where mentors are available, outside of the fellows host department or from other environments, really strengthen the applications. And then we want to see integration as well. We want to see the fellow included within the activities of the host department. We want them to be treated as other members of staff at this career stage. For example, we'd be included in decision making, provide appropriate opportunities for additional management responsibilities, administrative duties, or teaching commitments without impacting on their ability to deliver the fellowship. So the host support requirements are unchanged between round 7 and round 8, but for full information on these commitments, please see the scheme guidance. Beyond the stop there. So one of the other commitments we see for the host organizations is the commitment to the cost of the fellowship. This is an academic tapered salary commitment from year 3. So as we go through the process of, as we go through the 7 years of the fellowship, there is a tapering where the research organization picks up more of the salary from year 3 onwards. With a non-academic host, the contribution to the total cost of the fellowship is set out by sort of state aid rules. But there is a separate webinar specifically around business-funded applicants if you are a non-academic host. There is a required commitment from the academic host organization for a pathway to an open-ended research innovation focused position at the end of the 4 to 7 years, depending on what we're looking at. We recognize that research employees differ in their employment policies and practices, but we expect that the fellow will be in the best position to take up an open-ended position prior to the completion of their fellowship. And we want to see how that would be supportive and how that is progressing throughout the throughout the course of the fellowship. And this is something that we see picked up in the +3 points occasionally. As well as the support provided by the host organization, we fund Future Leaders Fellowships Development Network, and fellows funded in round 8 will join our fellows from round 1 to 7 in having access to this Future Leaders Fellowship Development Network. The network is comprised of partners from 8 institutions in different geographical locations, as well as experts from industry and third sector partners, and aims to inspire, convene, collaborate, develop, and upskill the fellows. There is a whole range of different activities that the development network it provides for our fellows. We recommend people get involved in as many as they can. The feedback we get from this is absolutely fantastic. We have research encounters, crucibles, leadership retreats undertaken in both a hybrid and in-person way, and these are interdisciplinary collaborative events. We have breakthrough tune-up and insight sessions, which are specialist-led workshops and interventions with global experts in a whole range of different areas. They have a mentoring program. They do 360-degree feedback. They do one-to-one coaching, long-term and in-depth engagement to identify areas of strength and areas of challenge, and really helping the fellows direct their personal and professional development. You can find much more information about this on the Future Leaders Fellowships Development Network website, which is we can put a link to aside with this. Yes, and the last thing is the support that is provided from UK Research and Innovation. We ourselves provide a number of things aside from just the funding to support these activities. We have cohort events. So for every round of the fellowship scheme, we have a starting meeting where everybody from that particular round gets together, meets each other, you know, we have sessions where we talk about, you know, we've got 7 rounds of this already happen now. So we know the sort of things and the pitfalls that people come across and the tips and tricks and bits of advice for people starting their scheme. We also have annual events for all of our fellows where, you know, all of those fellows from rounds 1 to 8 come together. And I believe both of these meetings, the next ones will be held in February 2024 in Manchester. We try and change the locations of them each year. We also have some specific cohort events just for our business fellows as well. We also have UKRI-wide activities, such as networking meetings that are run by UKRI councils, and we try and do what we can to get our fellows involved in a whole range of different UKRI activities, inputting them on all sorts of different levels. And we've seen a good number of fellows take us up on different activities in this space. Right, I've spoken for long enough. I said I was going to talk for half an hour. I have spoken for nearly 50 minutes, so apologies for that if you're expecting to get through this much faster. Most likely not, because you've seen the video length when you started and laughed at me when I made that comment. If you'd like to contact us, we are a listening scheme. We're constantly working with the community to see what we can do to change things, to make things better, to make things as inclusive as possible. So please, any feedback or you want to engage with UKRI, please come to us, let us know what you think, and we do make changes. If you want to find more information, you can click at the link in the slide set for Future Leaders Fellowships Round 8 on UKRI. And if you have any immediate questions, you can simply click on the link below and contact us at fellows@ukri.org. I'm not going to talk for any longer, so just last slide to say thank you. And if anybody has made it 51 minutes into this presentation, commendable. Go get yourself a cup of tea and a biscuit and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.